Winter had a way of swallowing sound in the high plains of the Colorado Territory. By the mid-1880s, the storms that rolled down from the mountains could erase a man from the earth without leaving so much as a whisper behind. Snow piled high against cabins, fences vanished overnight, and the wind screamed like something alive. Angry, relentless, and cruel. Eli Morgan had learned long ago not to fight it. For 6 years, his ranch sat dark on the edge of the valley, a lonely square of timber crouched beneath the endless sky. No smoke rose from its chimney after sunset. No lanterns glowed in its windows. Travelers passing by at night swore the place was abandoned, or worse, haunted by the kind of grief that never truly left. Eli did nothing to correct them. He lived as though the night deserved to win. Once, there had been light here. Once, the cabin windows had shone gold against the snow, and laughter had spilled out into the cold. His wife Rose had loved winter evenings. She used to say the darkness made the lamplight feel warmer, made the world smaller and kinder. Their little girl Lily would curl up near the hearth with her rag doll, humming tunelessly while Rose stitched by the fire. That life had ended in a blizzard 6 winters ago. Eli could still see it when he closed his eyes, the wall of white rising over the hills, the way the wind had come screaming down without warning. He had been hunting, just for a few hours, he'd told himself, leaving Rose and Lily snug at home. But the storm had shifted, swallowed the valley, and driven them out into the cold when the roof beams snapped under the weight of snow. They never made it back. They'd found Rose frozen near the tree line, her arms wrapped around Lily, trying to shield her from the wind. Eli had fallen to his knees in the snow and howled like an animal until his throat bled. After that, the light went out of him. He buried them on a hill overlooking the ranch, where the grass grew thick in summer and the wind sang low and steady. Then he shut the cabin up against the world. No lamps after sunset. No fire unless the cold threatened to kill him outright. No visitors, no town, no talk. Just work by day and darkness by night. Grief, he had learned, was quieter when you let the night keep it company. That night, the night the knock came, the storm was worse than most. Snow lashed the cabin walls like handfuls of gravel. The wind forced its way through every crack, moaning through the rafters like a wounded thing. Eli sat alone at the rough wooden table, eating cold beans straight from the tin, his breath fogging in the unlit room. Midnight had passed. He knew, because his bones always did. Then came the sound. At first, he thought it was the wind. Then it came again, soft, urgent, unmistakably human. A knock. Eli froze, spoon halfway to his mouth. No one came here, not in daylight, not ever at night. The knock came again, a little louder this time. 3 quick taps, uneven, followed by a pause. Then a small voice, nearly lost in the storm. "Mister?" His heart slammed against his ribs. He stood slowly, every instinct screaming danger, ghost memory. He crossed the cabin and wrenched the door open. Snow rushed in, stinging his face. Lanternless darkness pressed close, broken only by the pale gleam of snow-reflecting starlight. And there, standing on his porch, was a child. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Her hair was tangled and white with snow, her cheeks raw and red, her small boots soaked through. She clutched the doorframe with stiff fingers, her thin shawl no match for the storm howling around her. Her eyes, wide, dark, terrified, lifted to meet his. "Mama needs help," she whispered. The word struck him like a blow to the chest. For a heartbeat, Eli couldn't breathe. The wind roared, the snow spun, but all he could see was Lily's face as it had been the last morning he saw her, hopeful, trusting, unaware of the storm to come. He swallowed hard. "Where's your pa?" he asked gruffly, though his voice betrayed him. The girl shook her head. "Pa's gone. It's just Mama and me." Something twisted inside him. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma," she said. "My mama's Mabel." The name meant nothing to him, but the fear in her voice meant everything. She fell. Emma went on, words tumbling out now that he'd opened the door. "From the horse. By the river bend. She's hurt bad. She's got a baby coming, and she can't breathe right." Eli closed his eyes. The storm. A pregnant woman. A child sent alone into the dark. Every instinct he'd built over 6 years told him to shut the door, to retreat into the safety of darkness where nothing could be lost again. Instead, he stepped aside. "Come in," he said. Emma hesitated only a second before stumbling inside. Eli shut the door against the wind, plunging them into near blackness. The girl shivered violently, her teeth chattering. Without thinking, Eli shrugged out his heavy coat and wrapped it around her small shoulders. She looked up at him, startled, as if unused to kindness from strangers. "Thank you," she whispered. Something in him cracked. He moved then, fast, purposeful, striking flint to wick. The first lantern flared to life, its light weak at first, then steady. Emma gasped softly as the cabin emerged from the dark. Rough walls, a bare table, a single chair, shadows long and thin. Eli didn't stop. He lit another lantern. Then another. His hand shook as flame after flame bloomed, chasing away 6 years of darkness. He carried them to the porch, sending them along the rail, then farther, on fence posts, on barrels, anywhere they would stand. Golden light cut through the storm, a defiant path against the night. Emma watched him, eyes wide. "No one's ever lit lights like that before," she said. "Neither have I," Eli replied quietly. He slung a storm lantern over his arm, wrapped Emma tighter in his coat, and opened the door once more. The wind hit them full force, but this time the darkness didn't feel so absolute. "Show me the way," he said. Emma nodded, gripping his hand with surprising strength. Together, they stepped into the storm, following the lantern-lit path back into the night, toward the river bend, toward a fallen woman, and toward a future neither of them yet understood was waiting. And behind them, for the first time in 6 long winters, the cabin windows glowed warm against the snow. The storm did not welcome them. Snow drove sideways, needling Eli's face and filling his beard with ice. The wind tore at his coat, howling low and furious across the open land, as if angry to see lantern light daring to cross it. Emma leaned into him, her small hand locked in his, her step short but determined. "Not far," she shouted over the wind. "By the bend where the cottonwood leans." Eli nodded, though he could barely see more than a few yards ahead. He lifted the storm lantern higher, shielding the flame with his body. Each step sank deep, the snow swallowing his boots, tugging at his legs like it meant to pull him down and keep him. This was how it had happened before. The memory rose unbidden. The blizzard that had taken Rose and Lily, the helpless rage of knowing he hadn't been there when they needed him. His chest tightened until breathing hurt. Not again, he told himself. Not tonight. They reached the river bend in a blur of white and shadow. The frozen water lay beneath a crust of snow, the cottonwood hunched and skeletal against the sky. Beneath it, half buried in drifted snow, lay a woman. "Ma!" Emma cried, breaking free of Eli's hand. Eli dropped to his knees beside her, lantern light spilling across pale skin and dark hair matted with ice. Mabel lay twisted at an unnatural angle, one hand clutching her swollen belly, the other buried in snow. Her breath came in short, ragged gasps, a faint cloud of white in the cold air. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of Emma's voice. "Baby," she whispered, "you came back?" "I brought help," Emma said fiercely, taking her mother's hand. I told him everything." Eli swallowed. "Ma'am," he said gently, brushing snow from Mabel's face. "I'm Eli Morgan. I'm going to get you home." She tried to speak, but a sharp cry tore from her instead. Her body curled inward as pain seized her, and Eli saw the dark stain spreading beneath her coat. Blood. He closed his eyes for half a second, long enough to steady himself, short enough not to let fear take hold. "She's in labor," he said, more to himself than to Emma. "And it's too early." Mabel nodded weakly. "Fell when the horse spooked. I tried to walk. Couldn't." She sucked in a shallow breath. "Hurts everywhere." Eli shrugged out his coat, the one Emma wore, and laid it over Mabel, then wrapped her in his arms as carefully as if she were made of glass. She cried out when he lifted her, clutching his shirt, but she didn't fight him. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I know it hurts." Emma stayed close, her small fingers never leaving her mother's hand. "It'll be all right," she whispered, though her voice trembled. He's strong. I saw his lights. Eli turned into the wind and started back toward the ranch. Each step was a battle. The weight of Mabel was nothing compared to the weight of memory pressing down on him. Rose had been heavy in his arms, too, heavy with cold, heavy with finality. But this woman was warm, alive, breathing. Don't let go, he told himself. Don't let go. By the time the lantern-lit fence came into view, Eli's legs burned and his lungs felt raw. He kicked the door open with his boot and carried Mabel inside. Laying her gently on the kitchen table, he cleared with one sweep of his arm. The lanterns blazed now, casting steady light across the room. The warmth was slight, but it was there. Emma hovered close, eyes darting between her mother and Eli. I'll get fire going, Eli said. Emma, you stay right here. Yes, sir, she said, as solemn as a grown woman. Mabel cried out again, gripping the edge of the table. Something's wrong, she gasped. The baby. Eli took her hand, surprised to find his steady. I've got you, he said. Both of you. As he built the fire, the sounds of labor filled the cabin. Ragged breaths, whispered prayers, the creak of old wood settling under the storm's assault. Eli worked without thinking, guided by instinct and fragments of memory he didn't know he still had. His mother's voice long ago, delivering a neighbor's child when the doctor couldn't make it. He washed his hands, brought clean cloths, boiled water. He kept his movements calm, his voice low. Emma climbed onto a stool by her mother's head. Mama, she said softly, remember the story about the fox and the moon? Mabel managed a weak smile. Tell it, she whispered. Emma began, her voice small but steady, weaving a tale of a clever fox who followed moonlight through snow and always found his way home. Mabel listened, breathing with the rhythm of the story, her grip on Eli's hand tightening and loosening with each wave of pain. Hours passed like this. Pain and patience, fear and quiet resolve. When the baby finally came, she did not cry at first. Eli's heart stopped. Then a thin, fierce wail cut through the room, stronger than the storm outside. It's a girl, Eli said hoarsely, his vision blurring. He wrapped her gently, instinctively, in the flannel blanket he kept folded away for years, the one meant for Lily, still soft and smelling faintly of lavender. Mabel wept as Eli placed the baby against her chest. Emma leaned in close, tears streaming down her face, laughing and crying all at once. She's beautiful, Emma whispered. Just like you, Mama. Eli stepped back, his hands trembling. The lantern light shimmered, reflecting off tears he hadn't realized were falling. Life, fragile and stubborn, had pushed its way into his darkness. And for the first time since the storm that took everything from him, Eli Morgan believed he might not be too late after all. Dawn came softly, as if the night itself were reluctant to let go. The storm had spent its fury by the early hours, leaving the world wrapped in a hushed white stillness. Snow lay smooth and unbroken beyond the cabin windows, the sky pale and clean, washed free of anger. Inside, the fire burned low and steady, its warmth seeping into corners long left cold. Eli had not slept. He sat in the wooden chair by the kitchen table, elbows on his knees, watching the slow rise and fall of Mabel's chest as she slept. The newborn lay tucked against her, swaddled tight in a flannel blanket, her tiny mouth opening and closing in dreams. Emma slept curled in the rocker by the hearth, her head tipped back, her hair haloed gold by lantern light. Every lantern still burned. Eli hadn't had the heart to put them out. He rose quietly and tended the fire, adding a log, coaxing the flames higher. The crackles sounded impossibly loud in the stillness. He set a kettle to warm and fetch water, moving with the care of a man afraid that one wrong sound might break the fragile peace. When he returned, Mabel's eyes were open. Morning, he said softly. She smiled, a tired, radiant thing that seemed to light the room more surely than any lantern. Morning, she replied. Her voice was hoarse but steady. She's still here. So are you, Eli said. Her gaze lingered on him, something like wonder there. You saved us. Eli shook his head. You were the brave ones. Emma stirred at that, blinking awake. Mama? She asked, scrambling to her feet. I'm right here, baby. Mabel said, reaching for her. Emma climbed onto the table, careful of her sister, and leaned in close. She cried loud. Emma said proudly, "I told her the story helped." Eli turned away, busying himself with the kettle before his throat could tighten. By mid-morning, Mabel was sitting up, supported by pillows. Eli had cleaned the cabin as best he could, opening a window just enough to let fresh air in. Cold light spilled across the floor, carried with the sound of distant birds, small, hopeful notes against the quiet. Eli paused, one hand on the window frame. He couldn't remember the last time he let daylight in on purpose. He hesitated. I should go see them. Mabel followed his gaze as he looked toward the hill beyond the window. She nodded gently. Of course. He pulled on his coat and stepped outside. The snow crunched beneath his boots, each sound sharp in the stillness. He climbed the hill slowly, breath fogging the air, until he reached the two simple wooden markers standing side by side. Rose Morgan, Lily Morgan. He knelt, brushing snow from the carved names. From his pocket, he drew a small winter flower he'd found pushing up through the snow near the creek, stubborn and pale, defiant in its own quiet way. I lit the lights, he whispered, setting the flower between the markers. I should have done it sooner. I'm trying now. The wind stirred, gentle this time, as if an answer. When he returned, Mabel was awake, feeding the baby. Emma sat beside her, swinging her legs and humming softly. What's her name? Eli asked. Mabel smiled down at the tiny face nestled against her. Rose, she said after a moment. After my mama. Eli nodded, swallowing past the ache in his chest. It suits her. The day passed in small, careful motions. Eli brought soup, fetched more water, and mended what he could. Mabel rested, strength returning slowly, her color improving with each hour. Emma explored the cabin, asking questions, her curiosity filling spaces that had been empty for years. That afternoon, Eli saddled his horse. I need supplies, he said. Food, medicine. I'll be back before dark. Mabel's smile faltered. People talk. I know, Eli said. Let them. You're safe here. Emma stood tall. We're not scared, she declared. Eli smiled at that, a real one this time. He rode into town beneath a low sky, lantern light from the ranch still visible behind him even in daylight. A promise he hadn't known he was making. The general store fell quiet when he entered. Eyes followed him, curious, cautious. Whispers rose, quick and sharp, led by a familiar voice heavy with bitterness. I heard you got company, Morgan, said Thomas Hale, leaning against a crate. A widow in your house. In trouble, they say. Eli met his gaze, unflinching. A woman and her children needed help. Hale smirked. And you just happen to be the only man around? Before Eli could answer, a small voice rang out clear as a bell from the doorway. He lit the lights. Emma said, standing straight as an arrow, her chin lifted. He saved my mama and my sister. That's all there is. Silence fell. Hale's mouth opened, then closed. No one spoke. Eli looked down at Emma, astonished. She took his hand. Mama says the truth's enough. It was. By the time they rode back to the ranch, the sun was low and the snow glowed soft and pink. The lanterns burned bright, welcoming them home. Eli dismounted slowly, heart full in a way that felt unfamiliar and terrifying good. Inside, Mabel waited, baby in her arms, light in her eyes. And for the first time in 6 long years, the future did not feel like something to fear. The days that followed carried a quiet rhythm, a steady pulse of small kindnesses and cautious hope. Eli worked like a man reborn. The harsh winter no longer felt like a wall closing in, but a challenge to be met. With Mabel and her daughters by his side, the ranch began to breathe again. He repaired the roof first. The old shingles, cracked and brittle from years without care, were replaced one by one under the brittle sunlight. Mabel helped gather wood, her strength growing by the day, while Emma ran between the fence posts, her laughter a light wind that carried through the cold. Eli fixed the fences next, mending broken rails and setting posts deep into frozen earth. He worked with careful hands, the effort grounding him like nothing had in years. Each nail driven was a promise. To the land, to Mabel, to the children, and to himself. Evenings were quieter, but fuller than they'd been in a long time. They shared simple meals around a kitchen table. Stew and fresh bread baked in the small cast-iron stove. Emma told stories, sometimes to distract Mabel from her lingering pains, sometimes just for the joy of it. Eli listened more than he spoke, letting the warmth of the fire and family seep into his bones. One night, after the baby had fallen asleep, wrapped in Eli's late wife's silver locket, Mabel had insisted Eli give it to the child as a keepsake. The two adults sat in the flickering lamplight. Mabel's hand found Eli's across the table. Her eyes were tired but steady, and in them he saw gratitude and something deeper, something it thought buried beneath snow and sorrow. "I don't want to leave," she said softly. "Not anymore." Eli squeezed her hand, the weight of his own feelings settling quietly between them. "You're not alone here," he said. "Not anymore." The silence between them held no awkwardness, only the gentle understanding that comes when two broken souls start to mend together. Weeks turned into spring. The snow melted slowly, revealing green shoots pushing through frozen ground. The ranch came alive with birdsong and the fresh scent of thawing earth. Eli taught Emma to ride the old horse, her laughter ringing as she wobbled at first, then found her balance. Mabel took to teaching local children in the small-town schoolhouse, her gentle voice and warm smile drawing them in like sunlight after a long winter. The townsfolk's whispers faded as the truth of their new families settled like dust on the valley floor. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of amber, Mabel returned Eli's coat to him. She slipped it onto his shoulders with a quiet smile that held more meaning than words. "I'm keeping it," she said simply. Eli caught her gaze and smiled back, the unspoken promise between them as solid as the mountains surrounding the ranch. 1 year later, the ranch thrived like never before. Mabel's laughter echoed through fields as she taught children beneath blossoming cottonwoods. Eli's steady hand guided travelers who found shelter and kindness within their doors. Emma, now taller and braver, knocked softly on Eli's cabin door each morning, her cheerful voice calling out, "Breakfast's ready." And every night, the old storm lantern burned on the porch, a steadfast beacon in the darkness, chosen by a man who once thought he'd lost his way. That single, desperate knock at midnight had brought light where there was only shadow, love where there was only loss, and hope where there was only cold. Eli Morgan stood on the porch one evening, lantern in hand, watching the flames flicker against the falling snow. The storm no longer held him prisoner. It had led him home. Spring deepened into summer, and the Morgan ranch blossomed not only with new life, but with a renewed spirit. The cold silence that had once swallowed the land and the man was replaced by soft laughter, shared meals, and the gentle bustle of family reclaiming itself. Eli moved through his days with a quiet purpose. The bitter isolation he had once embraced had softened, making way for the steady warmth that grew in the presence of Mabel, Emma, and baby Rose. His hands, once calloused only from work and grief, now lingered with gentle care, fixing a broken chair, braiding hair, mending the worn flannel blanket that wrapped the newborn like a talisman of hope. One afternoon, Eli found himself seated beneath the shade of a tall cottonwood, Mabel beside him, Emma playing nearby with the neighbor's children. The sun filtered through the leaves, dappling their faces with light and shadow. "I wrote to Rose's folks," Eli said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. Told them I'm finding light again." Mabel turned to him, her eyes shining with something like relief. "They'll be glad to hear that." He nodded, feeling the weight of 6 years lift just a little. "I've been carrying this silence like a stone in my chest. I think it's time to put it down." Mabel reached out, her hand brushing his. "We carry each other now." Their fingers intertwined, a simple touch heavy with meaning, an unspoken promise that the past, with all its pain, would not define the future. As summer ripened, so too did the bond between Eli and Mabel. Words between them were few but heartfelt, spoken in glances, in shared tasks, in the quiet comfort of evening fires. Theirs was a slow and gentle romance, born not of passion but of healing, a mutual understanding stitched together by kindness and trust. Emma blossomed under their care, her brave spirit shining brighter with each passing day. She learned to read by the firelight and help Mabel in the garden, her laughter a constant melody weaving through the ranch's renewed heartbeat. One evening, as the sky burned orange and pink, Eli found Mabel watching the sunset from the porch. She turned to him with a soft smile and offered something wrapped carefully in a faded cloth. "It's for you," she said. Eli unfolded to find his late wife Rose's silver locket. The same one now passed gently from hand to hand, carrying memories and new beginnings. "I want her to be part of this," Mabel whispered. "All of this." Eli clasped the locket around his neck, the cool metal warm against his skin. In that moment, he felt the past and future merge, not as a burden but as a gift. The ranch, once a place of sorrow and silence, was now a home filled with hope and life. And every night, as the lantern's steady glow chased away the darkness, Eli Morgan understood that the love he thought he had lost had never truly gone away. It had only been waiting to light the way back home. A full year had passed since that desperate midnight knock, a knock that shattered 6 long winters of silence and darkness. Spring had blossomed into summer once again, and the Morgan Ranch stood alive with color and laughter. The snow had long melted, replaced by wildflowers swaying in the gentle breeze and cottonwoods whispering overhead. Eli stood on the porch, the old storm lantern glowing warmly beside him. It was no longer a symbol of a night fraught with loss and fear, but a beacon of the family he had found, of hope he had dared to embrace. From the kitchen came the soft sound of footsteps, then a small voice, familiar, cheerful, and steady. "Breakfast ready, Eli." Emma's gentle knock echoed the one that had brought him back from the edge, and Eli smiled, his heart full. Mabel appeared behind Emma, carrying the newborn Rose wrapped in a fresh flannel blanket. Her eyes met Eli's with quiet tenderness, a wordless thankfulness that spoke louder than any declaration. Together, they gathered at the table, their family, whole and healing. Eli reached down to lift the baby, the weight light but precious in his arms. He caught Mabel's hand, squeezing it gently, and Emma's bright eyes met his with all the trust and courage he had come to cherish. The world outside was no longer cold or cruel. It was a place of possibility, of light breaking through even the longest, darkest winters. The storm lantern flickered softly in the morning breeze, its flame steady and sure. And Eli Morgan knew, with a quiet certainty, that love had come home. One small knock, one whispered plea in the darkest night, had changed everything. It had brought light where there was only shadow, hope where there was only sorrow, and family where there was once only solitude. The night had passed, and with it, a frozen heart had thawed forever.